Okay, any kind of data, probably best to go year over year, not month to month. That doesn't, I mean, there's obviously trends in retail. Big Decembers usually are slow. January's, February's. Restaurant industry ends up facing the same thing. Sometimes I notice this in the States. TV network will say, or they'll put data out saying numbers are down in October, November compared to last year. Yes, there was a federal election last year. It was a big deal. And this year, there's nothing. So you end up reacting sometimes to year over year numbers. That said, this is hard to miss in the GTA for real estate. Quoting this from the Toronto Star, from October to December 21. Let's think about 21 where we were at. 51 properties sold at a loss in the GTA, 29 in Toronto proper, 22 the rest of the region. Not many. Same period in 2022, 224 properties sold below what they were bought for in the GTA, 79 in Toronto, and this jumps off the page at me, 145 in the rest of the region. So it's 51 to 224 overall, year over year, same period of time, 21 to 22. 22 in the rest of the region, 145 in the rest of the region, about 7 times what it was. Really something. Develle Morrison's a broker with Bosley Real Estate, and we love sort of tapping her knowledge about this particular scenario. Develle, are people, when I give you those numbers, you can't be surprised by where that's at right now, that people are, if they're desperate to sell, they'll end up taking a loss if they need to sell that home.
Yes, unfortunately, that is the case. And you're right. Those numbers are not surprising to me. I think if it's someone who purchased in 2017 or 2018 or 2019, they're going to be okay. But somebody who purchased just recently, unfortunately, the news is not so great.
How would you compare the amount of homes on the market right now in January of 23 compared to January of 22? How dramatic is the difference?
The number is dramatic. There's far fewer homes, condos on the market in the 416 for sure. That being said, the houses that are on the market now are garnering a lot of attention. I literally just sold 2 properties this past week, one a house in Midtown Toronto and one a condo downtown around the St. Lawrence market. And I was actually surprised to see the number of showings that we were getting. But I realize it's because there is not a lot on the market. So what is on the market is getting attention.
Is there a way, Develle, to describe the typical seller right now? Do they have to move for work? Are they suffering job loss? Again, desperate times call for desperate measures. You wouldn't put a home on the market right now unless you absolutely had to.
You know, it's interesting. People are just making life changes. So it's not the desperation that people seem to think that is out there. You know, one client was moving up. And if you buy and you sell in the same market, it doesn't really matter, so someone was looking for a larger place. So we found them a larger place in this market, but it meant we needed to sell their place in this market as well, too. Another client I was working with, they're moving to a retirement home. They've been living in their home since like 2002. So they've made lots of money. They don't need to be stressed out that the value of their home is worth a couple of $100,000 less now than it was last year, because overall they're still doing well. So I think you have a lot of that. You don't have the desperation yet. Of course, there's a couple of people like that. I've noticed a couple more sort of vendor take back mortgages out there, which is something that we haven't seen since, I believe, the early 90s, where somebody actually, the seller has a mortgage at a low rate and they're actually willing to pass that along to the new buyers so they can also get the same low rate.
Now, January, February isn't a time when it's preferable to move. We see a big push, obviously, in the spring. We see a big push in the summer. Start of a new school year makes a difference. Being able to move in better weather, given where we live, makes a difference. Are all those factors as to why it's slow right now, but there has to be some hope for some pickup in the market for April and May and June?
Well, it's funny. I actually usually counsel people that now is the best time to sell.
Yeah.
And it's because there is not a lot of inventory and there's people looking. There's people who at January 1st made up their mind they want a place. And there's not a lot for them to buy. So I always like to tell people, no, you want to sell in the Jan-Feb market. You don't want to wait till the spring, because as I speak to a lot of the other agents in my office, I also find out that they have more listings coming out in the next few weeks. So the market's going to get a little bit more competitive. So to me, you want to, get where other people are not. So you list now. By the time spring comes, there's going to be too many more listings on the market. And recently, the OSFI, the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions, mentioned that they are looking for other reasons to tighten up mortgages. And that could happen in the spring. So I would counsel a seller saying, you don't want to wait till spring because you don't know what the environment is going to be like for buyers in that time frame.
We know that at the peak of housing prices, people were playing a little game, and we could almost describe people as flippers, somebody that was simply going to buy, maybe make an adjustment or two, a repair or two, tighten something up, put new floors in, and then try and resell it quickly. I'm just guessing right now, just because of interest rates and where they're at, that might be a rarity. Or are you still spotting people buying a house and then trying to move it as quickly as 8 to 10 months later?
No, I would say a lot of the flippers left the market years ago, because the prices in Toronto had become so expensive that it really didn't make a lot of sense to flip. I mean, now there is anti-flipping legislation as well. You now have to declare on your taxes if you sold a house in that particular year. The CRA is clamping down on people. So I would say there's very, very few flippers in the market. For most people, when you buy real estate, you should hold on to it for a long time. This is not something you're going to sell in, 2, even 3 years. This is something you should be living in for at least, or holding on to for at least 5 to 10 years. And at least that way, fluctuations in the market won't affect you as much.
It's always great stuff. Develle Morrison, thanks so much for the time today. I always appreciate getting your expertise on the real estate market.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. She's a broker with Bosley Real Estate. Great to have her on, as always.